Hi, everyone. How are you? I hope you're well. So, this week we are looking at something a little bit less book wise, right? The last 2 weeks we've been looking at Endgame. Before that, we looked at the Plague. We looked at No Exit. We even looked at the PDF of Martin Esslin, sort of talking about the beginnings of the Theory of the Absurd. Well, this week we're going back a little bit to that PDF by Martin Esslin. We're going to be reading the section on Ionesco, and we're going to be talking about what changes when we move from Beckett to Ionesco, and eventually when we move into Genet, right? If we talk about the theory of the absurd, very much like Martin Esslin says, it is a title that was given after all these works were written. It's a title that, in general, was not necessarily always welcomed by the authors themselves, but it's also a title that is given to plays that are very, very different. I mean, if we just very simply look at Shakespeare, not every one of the plays that he writes are the same. Are all the plays that he wrote his? I'm sure people have some opinions. But the idea behind the theory of the absurd has to do with what we've already talked about, right? This idea that these plays present a philosophy in the action and in the interaction between characters, right? And that sometimes means that we get plays that we will find to be fairly humorous, that we'll find to be exasperating at times because they just don't make a lot of sense, and that sometimes we will see as ways of exploring the intersection between the absurd and the political, right? What does the absurd have to do with the way that our governments run, with the way that our our belief systems work? These are all things that I think are necessary to talk about, and so this particular week is going to feel a little bit lighter, right? I do still want you to read that Ionesco PDF. It's again, go back up to where we had that PDF. If you have not downloaded it already, just simply go back in the modules and find that Martin Esslin PDF and open that section to Ionesco and read that. But we're also going to talk a little bit today about the idea of humor. I'm going to suggest a few things that you take a look at. I may post a few links to some things that I find particularly humorous. But we're going to talk about, and probably in doing so take all of the fun and humor out of comedies, right? What does it mean to be funny? What does humor have to do with any of this? Well, when we look at what we've seen so far, what we remember hearing from Nell in Endgame is that there is nothing quite as funny as another person's unhappiness, right? And it goes right back to, as I talked about, the idea in Greek theater that we find comedies to be funny because we see flaws exaggerated. We see people receiving a due payment for the things that they have done incorrectly. And in some cases, we see ourselves reflected in a ridiculous way and are able to laugh at them and also evaluate ourselves, right? We leave with a better understanding of, yes, I can be ridiculous in this way too. But, in comedies, people do not, in general, get hurt, right? In the Aristotle's Poetics, there is an important quote, and it is that the mask of comedy, right, is twisted into this sort of grotesque, right, smile, but it does not indicate pain. It does not indicate discomfort, right? It simply indicates that this is a ridiculous situation. People in comedy should not be dying, right? We don't have comedies in general and cartoons in general where we understand that once the anvil falls on Wile E. Coyote as he's pursuing the Roadrunner, well, he's dead now. He's not coming back, right? We don't have that. We know that whoever blows up in a cartoon, whoever gets, flattened by a truck in a cartoon, they're coming back, right? And maybe they're coming back, with lots of bandages and and casts and everything like that. But we know the next time we see them, they're going to be fine, right? We assume the same thing about a lot of sitcoms, right? That in a sitcom, if somebody has an accident, it's part of the plot for a little while, but we're probably not going to be talking about that accident and the problems that that's going to cause for long periods of time, right? Any slapstick that happens, any people that fall down a stair, any people that break their legs, they're going to be fine, probably by the next episode. And so comedy involves, in many cases, a lot of violence. Why? Let's talk about that in the next video, and also let's talk about how we see humor and what kind of humor we may be drawn to.